Joining us now is Hilary Fordwich, President and founder of Strelmark. Hilary, thank you so much for your time. Yesterday, tens of thousands gathered to honour and remember the life of Charlie Kirk in Arizona. And there were so many incredible moments throughout the memorial, and they could be felt right here in Australia and I'm sure all over the world. Now, this is part of the President's tribute to Charlie Kirk.
Charles James Kirk was heinously murdered by a radicalized, cold-blooded monster for speaking the truth that was in his heart. He was violently killed because he spoke for freedom and justice, for God, country, for reason, and for common sense. He was assassinated because he lived bravely, he led boldly, and he argued brilliantly without apology. He did what was right for our nation.
Hilary, I think the President was absolutely spot on there, and it was really heartwarming to see the President be such a source of comfort to Erika Kirk, and what an incredible woman she is for giving the man responsible for her husband's murder. Hilary, what did you make of that?
Well, yes, thank you for having me back again, Gabriella. Always a pleasure to be with you, but a very sad subject. I do think she is absolutely incredible. It's not surprising, really, that Charlie would have an incredible wife. Obviously, she's extremely beautiful, but obviously he wanted her for her great depth and her intellect and her passion, her commitment to family, country, and her religious deep faith. I think what's most inspiring, and I've heard so many young women, you've seen this across the internet, he's addressed young men and young women, but I think he's inspired a movement. I would actually say, and to paraphrase what she said, Erika said, was, they thought they were silencing Charlie, but really they haven't. We're doubling down. And I think you're going to get double the amount of people. A lot of young women have said they're inspired with the message too. And very importantly, I think, Erika, when you look at this in contrast to other deaths, such as, say, for example, George Floyd, where there was burning and protests, a lot of arson and violence. This was peaceful. Over 90,000 people just in that stadium alone, and all peaceful.
It really was, and JD Vance described it as a revival, and I don't think that's an overstatement. I mean, since Charlie Kirk was murdered in the most horrific way, the most evil way possible, killing someone who was so good, we've seen so many people right around the world kind of return to church, pick up the Bible for the first time, but lots of speeches yesterday. This is a bit of JD Vance.
I can't help but think that they tried to silence my friend Charlie Kirk. They tried to silence our dear friend Charlie Kirk. And tonight, we speak with Charlie and for Charlie louder than ever. The evil murderer who took Charlie from us expected us to have a funeral today, and instead, my friends, we have had a revival in celebration of Charlie Kirk and of his Lord Jesus Christ.
I think he's exactly right. Also, Turning Point USA's new tour will begin today at the University of Minnesota, where Conservative commentator Michael Knowles will be filling in. But Hilary, I believe this movement, it's only going to grow, it's only going to get bigger.
You're absolutely correct there as well. I will say that I believe, and I always like to state when I know the actual facts, the purported number was about, I believe, 67,000 new applications for Turning Point chapters in universities, colleges, and high schools across the US and other parts of the world too. Don't forget, he spoke at Oxford just this past May in England. And I think this is also not just the United States. It's elsewhere because of that. The march in London on September 13th, the Freedom UK march, that was arranged, of course, long before, but it turned into also a Charlie honoring event with them chanting Charlie over and over again. So I think, Gabriella, it's not just the United States. Thousands of new chapters will be born from this.
Absolutely. We're chanting his name here in Sydney, Australia, that's for sure. Now, just back at looking at the memorial that took place yesterday, it was interesting. Donald Trump and Elon Musk were spotted sitting next to one another in the president's suite alongside UFC CEO Dana White. Let's look at this. Now, Hilary, this is the first time that Trump and Elon Musk have been seen together publicly since their very public fallout. And Elon Musk posted a photo to his X account of the reunion with the caption "For Charlie." What do you make of this? Is this a sign that they're potentially going to be patching things up?
Well, yes, and absolutely. And actually, Donald Trump posted the same thing for Charlie. So I think you can see that they're united. Also, I did read from lip readers the interpretation of what President Trump had said to Elon Musk. He said, good to see you again. How have you been? And then he said, I've missed you. And I thought that was a really great admission and really very warm. I think it's so good for the nation. I think it's so good for the conservative movement. I think they're far stronger together. It would have been ludicrous, Gabriella, for Elon Musk to have founded another party, because all he really would have done would have been to have split the Republican vote. So this is the best thing. And yes, if it's the Charlie effect, that will be good for the conservative movement indeed.
I think so. I think plenty of people are happy to see the band back together, if you like. But let's look at the Democrats. While many of us were mourning and remembering the incredible Charlie Kirk, dozens of Democrats decided not to join Republicans in approving a resolution honouring Charlie Kirk. So the House of Representatives adopted the resolution, which honours Kirk's life and legacy and condemns political violence in a largely bipartisan vote on Friday. But 58 Democrats voted against the resolution. They include Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Maxine Waters. And it's interesting and sadly not surprising, Ilhan Omar has also doubled down on her disgusting comments about Charlie Kirk, where she essentially blamed him for his own assassination. And this is a bit more of what she had to say on CNN.
What I find jarring is that there are so many people willing to excuse the most reprehensible things that he said, that they agree with that they're willing to have monuments for him, that they want to create a day to honor him, and that they want to produce resolutions in the House of Congress honoring his life and legacy. It is one thing to care about his life, because obviously so many people loved him, including his children and wife. But I am not going to sit here and be judged for not wanting to honor any legacy this man has left behind. That should be in the dustbin of history, and we should hopefully move on and forget the hate that he spewed every single day.
Should be in the dustbin of history. Hilary, it's pretty disgusting.
Oh, it is. And you were correct on the list that you named of the 58 Democrats that voted against. There were another 22 that abstained from any vote whatsoever. I think actually, ironically, what they've done, if we talked about the Charlie effect of getting President Trump and Elon Musk back together, what they've really done is they've actually broadcast that they're for political violence and they're for principles that aren't acceptable in a civilized society. That's what they've really done. And as I mentioned, it's the usual suspects. I do think also with Ilhan Omar, I think one thing that she actually should be investigated for is, she came into office virtually broke as a bartender. She makes $155,000 a year, and 5 years later, she's worth approximately $29 million. How does that happen? So that's another issue. And also, her family left Somalia. They were involved in sort of like massacres. And her family is not a fine family. And I think there's a lot more to this. I will say actually that even Phil Mickelson, the PGA Pro champion golfer, he even weighed in on how disgusting her remarks were. So far and wide, they're broadcasting that they're basically pro political violence, which is a ghastly place for them to be boxed in. They've done it themselves. It's an own goal.
There have been some major Maha moves. On Friday, a CDC advisory panel voted to change COVID vaccine guidance towards individual decision-making. So this recommendation encourages patients to speak with their doctors about whether to get an updated shot instead of just recommending it for anyone and everyone 6 months or older. Now, that's a huge change. But also, Hilary, today, Donald Trump and RFK Jr. made a major announcement around autism rates. They announced that the FDA will be warning doctors that taking Tylenol during pregnancy may raise the risk of autism. Listen to this.
Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good.
Not good. He's very direct, isn't he? But look, for viewers here in Australia, we have to note that Australia's Therapeutic Goods Association has said it's not investigating the link between Tylenol and autism for Australian consumers, and the TGA has no current active safety investigations for paracetamol and autism, or paracetamol and neurodevelopmental disorders more broadly. This is what the regulator said in a statement. But Hilary, back to Donald Trump's announcement. What's your take? I want your assessment of this pretty historic announcement.
Yes, everybody, this is something that I think is far more personal. I just don't put chemicals in my body. I mean, if you have a headache, you're probably not drinking enough water because it's dehydration of the brain. If you have other aches and pains, there's many other ways to address it, whether it's stretching, natural homeopathic ways, massages for aching joints. I mean, there's so many things you can do that are far more natural. And also with regard to our health overall and the vaccines, your health is totally dependent on the strength of your immune system. So you can strengthen your own immune system without taking chemicals, which are totally and utterly unnatural. The most important thing is, we have a certain genetic predisposition to our health. You can't control that. What you can control is 100% of the remaining about 73% of your health. And that's your own personal nutrition, exercise, lack of stress, and lifestyle. I think that's so important. Get enough exercise, eat really well, and try not to put chemicals in your body, really any. Yeah,
it's so important, just going back to basics. That should really be a big focus of some of the messaging. Now, Trump and RFK Jr., of course, they've said it time and time again, they are supportive of vaccines. However, they are looking into certain vaccines. And Donald Trump is just not afraid to call out what others think is just too controversial as he really takes on Big Pharma. Listen to what he had to say here.
Because when you go from 20,000 to 10,000 and then you go to 12, there's something artificial. They're taking something. And by the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism. Does that tell you something? That's currently, is that a correct statement, by the way?
There are some studies that suggest that, with the Amish, for example.
The Amish, yeah, virtually. I heard none. See, Bobby wants to be very careful with what he says, and he should, but I'm not so careful with what I say. But you have certain groups. The Amish, as an example, they have essentially no autism.
Listening to Donald Trump, RFK Jr. there, I think hearing them today is a reminder as to why so many people support RFK Jr., so many people support Donald Trump, because they just want more answers and they're happy to see leaders really investigating this.
Yes, I think so. And there certainly is a place. I mean, obviously, pharmaceuticals and vaccines have been responsible for eradicating, some dreadful diseases, whether it's meningitis or polio, measles, etc. But I don't think that the vast majority of the population with this massive increase in vaccine in recent years was necessary. The vaccines that were developed, 20, 30 years ago, obviously have stood humanity well. Life expectancy is longer than ever. So that there's a certain degree that is beneficial. I think it's the excess, Gabriella. That's the big issue now. The point that President Trump made with regard to the Amish, there are also other, groups in society with different beliefs, and they don't take as many vaccines, and they don't eat things out of packets. There's an American expression, actually, always read the label. And I always say, don't read the label, because don't eat things out of packets. Eat fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and natural things, and you won't have all these issues.
Great advice, Hilary Fordwich. Thank you so much for joining us. Always brilliant to speak with you.
Pleasure, Gabriella. Absolutely.